That
Okay.
works.
I'm gonna do,
Okay.
okay. We're ready.
All right. Hi, my name is Lynetta McIver, Multicultural Outreach Director with AARP Louisiana. Before we start today's cooking show, I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you something about AARP. AARP is the world's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization with a nationwide network of staff, volunteers, and partners helping more than 100 million Americans 50 and older achieve financial security, health security, and personal fulfillment. In Louisiana, we proudly serve more than 430,000 members with offices located in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and volunteers, team, and chapters located throughout the state. Presently, our offices are closed due to the pandemic, but we're working together to bring fun and informative events and activities to you, such as this. We're happy to sponsor Wellness Wednesdays in partnership with Tulane University's Gold Ring Center of Culinary Medicine to help you achieve positive health goals by adapting cooking and eating habits. Today, we're preparing kid-friendly recipes and creating healthy, delicious snacks that everyone can enjoy. No kids, no problems. These snacks are great no matter your age. During our Ask the Chef segment, we will discuss safety concerns for working in the kitchen with kids, including knife and appliance safety and different tools that can help increase safety for little ones. We'll also explore how to choose satisfying snacks that provide energy, vitamins, and minerals to give your body the good stuff it needs to be healthy at any age. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you that we encourage participants to cook along with us. And for those who will be joining our show in the future in August, which we will have Hispanic cuisine, and through the fall months, we are providing you a giveaway. For those who show their camera and show that they're cooking, we will give you a chef apron like you see on the chefs are wearing today. We're also moving to what we call the Hello Fresh concept, where in the fall you will be able to pick up bags of ingredients from the Gold Ring Center located on Broad Street and bring it back home with you so you can actively participate in the show. So we really, really want to get you excited about that. If this is something that you're interested in, I will put my email address in chat and you can email me and I will provide you updated information as our plans progress. Today, we're cooking along with Chef Amber Dyer, who is the Assistant Program Director and Chef Instructor at the Gold Ring Center for Culinary Medicine. Also joining us is Janielle and Caroline, three chefs in the kitchen today. Welcome, everyone. And now, before we start cooking, I'll ask Heather to explain a few technical tips to have the best experience during the show. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Lynetta. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our class today. We're really excited for this one. I do want to go over a couple of things. So we are recording this session, and I believe Lynetta will get that recording available to anybody who registered for the class after the class session. You'll notice right now that everyone is muted. That's just to keep the background noise down during the session. We're going to be jumping around between various chef hosts. So if you are cooking along with us today, we would love for you to let us know. You can do that by either sending a message in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and let us know. We want to just make sure that we keep track of you if you are cooking along so that we can make sure we're on the right pace for everybody. Now, we are doing a lot of recipes today. So if somebody is just cooking one or two, that's totally fine. But just keep us posted. And then a few technical things. So if you are not super familiar with Zoom and how to mute and unmute yourself, you should be able to see in the lower section of your screen, there should be some options where if you hover over, you'll see you can stop your video, start your video, you can click mute or unmute. And then the other thing I want to mention is I'm going to be doing some spotlight videos. So right now you see me spotlighted, before you saw Lynetta. In order for you to get the best view of this class, you're going to want to set your view setting to speaker view. Now on a computer, that should be in your upper right-hand corner. You should see a little box or a little button that says view, and you can toggle back and forth. You can either be on speaker view or gallery view. Speaker view will work best for this. Now, if you are on a tablet, you typically have to just swipe left or right to change the view. I don't know if it's left or right, but swipe one way or the other and you'll get there. If you're having any problems with how you're seeing the screen, send me a message in the chat and I'll try to help walk you through it so that we can get moving with the cooking. I see that Heather has mentioned that she's cooking along. That's really great. Heather, just keep us posted if we're going too fast or if you need anything during the process. We are here to help you out. All right, I think that's it for my announcements. We'll have some more things to talk about at the end of class. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chef Amber. She is going to get us started with our Ask the Chef session and get us started with some of our prep work that we have to do today. All right, just give me 1 second here. All right, Chef Amber, take it away.
All right, good morning. Today we're going to be going through several recipes that are great for cooking with little helpers in the kitchen. Working through our crispy baked chicken tenders and broccoli bites. That works great for any type of harder vegetable. We're also going to be serving that with some buttermilk ranch and buffalo dipping sauces. Additionally, we'll be making some zucchini muffins, which are great for snacks and breakfast. And then we will be having a strawberry banana sorbet and a chocolate magic shell, which is my favorite part. So hopefully y'all enjoy those separate parts. As Heather and Miss Lynetta mentioned, you can cook however many of these items that you'd like. And then that video will be available for later. So there's some important things we want to be thinking about while we're prepping. We want to thinking about our mise en place, right? Mise en place meaning a place for everything. So we want to start measuring out any of the ingredients that we're going to need. We want to preheat our oven. If you're going to be making the chicken and broccoli bites, the oven is for 400 degrees. But if you're going to be doing the zucchini muffins, which is what we're going to start with, we want to preheat our oven to 350. So once we preheat our oven to 350, we put our muffins in. When they're done, we'll just change the temperature and put the bites in. And then with that, we'll just want to make sure that we have our baking sheets lined and ready to go with either parchment or foil for those broccoli and chicken bites. And then we'd want to make sure that we have a muffin pan ready, whether you're putting liners in those or we want to get that ready for the zucchini muffins. Okay, so for getting in the kitchen, we really want to be thinking about when we have little persons around, it's really great that we can have them help cook. Kids in general are a lot more interested in the foods that they're eating and are willing to be a lot more adventurous eaters if they help cook the food. And so we really want to be thinking about what ways we can get our kids involved in the kitchen, but feel really safe about it and feel like we're in an environment that has a lot of anxieties, right? We have flames and we got heat and we have sharp objects. And we really want to be thinking about how we can make this a safe environment, but also the first step in eating together as a family can be cooking together as a family. And so we want to make that as comfortable as possible. The way we can do that is by really thinking about ways that we can avoid them. And if we're able to do that, then we're able to really help build confidence in the kitchen, right? As the adults in the kitchen, we should be showing our kids confidence in the kitchen. We call it using your chefiness. And then that way we're super confident and we can make really delicious meals. And so today, while we're talking about the things that we're making, I want you to put your chef caps on and think about how you would change it if you wanted it to be a little bit different to work for the flavors that you like. So first thing about safety I want to talk about is we have some objects that I really appreciate and prefer when I'm teaching my kids classes at the Goldring Center. These are some of the equipments that I really like. So the first thing I want to talk about is our knife options. So for some things, more of these plastic knives are a lot better option. This is technically a lettuce knife, but they come in all different sizes if I hold them comparatively. So they really can work with whatever size hands you have in the kitchen. That's how we can learn how to work with a knife that's more like a traditional chef's knife that we would be using in the kitchen as chefs or as adults. And so these are very similar in size. So we're learning how to navigate those and getting proper holding in place. The other thing is I'm no fool. I know that plastic's not going to cut through everything. So the other great option is to use something like a steak knife or a butter knife, depending on what we're going to be cutting. And so something like today with the chicken, this knife would be a better option. If we're going to be cutting some vegetables, we can be using some of these other things. But when we're thinking about the kitchen, knives aren't the only answer, right? We can be using a lot of other things. And so what I really love is using scissors. And you can buy them super cheap, and you can have them on hand in the drawer just where you have your adult kitchen scissors, because these are great for learning those smaller, tighter skills. And so I really love these because any of our kids can use them, and they have a lot more safety, just like what we're using in schools. And so by using these, we can be cutting up any type of leaf. We can be cutting up our herbs. This is actually, I use a bigger version, but I use the kitchen scissors for anything I can in the kitchen because I do think it's a lot more convenient. The other thing we can be thinking about is with our peelers or with our other sharp objects, we could be using things like our cut gloves. I really love the non-cut gloves. I'm putting my hands to compare in size. You can get them in adult size and you can get them in little hands. They all come at different levels or different sizes, so you can get them even smaller. And the idea is that this goes on your non-dominant hand. So that way, if we are cutting with our knife, we're not cutting our fingers. Same thing that if we're using a peeler, we're holding our vegetable with these hands so that way we're not hurting ourselves. Now, I am showing you different sizes because these aren't just great for kids, these are great for anyone. And so I really recommend these. We use these in our classes for our older adults who have maybe they have shaky hands, maybe they're not as comfortable in the kitchen, maybe certain neurological conditions really make it really great that we can use these. And so we use these in our with classes with older adults who just want to feel a little bit more safe. I use these when I'm using a mandolin because I want to make sure I'm avoiding all different types of ways that I could hurt myself. So I love cut gloves. The other thing that I really want to be thinking about is ways that I can be cutting besides just with the knives. So I really love using graters. Mine has multiple sides, but you can be getting strips. You can be getting a rough set grate. So this is really awesome. It's a great task for any of our little humans in the kitchen because it takes a little bit longer. And when we're using the cut glove or the non-cut glove, it makes it a little bit safer. So something like today with our zucchini, it's a great option. If we are going to be grating cheese is for some reason everyone's favorite task in the kitchen when we have kids classes. So those are tasks that we really want to be thinking about, and we're really trying to highlight while we're going through this cooking process and all of our recipes today, the things that are really great for smaller hands. But I also really want you to be thinking about what's the best for the children in your life, because it's going to be different based on every child. There's not a golden age of once they hit 5, they can start doing this, and once they're 8, they can do this other thing. Really individual the child. I know my cousin Heather's on this class, and Silas, her son, was making food on the stovetop. And so she feels a lot more comfortable with that because she's been practicing. So that's gonna be dependent on the kid. The other option is with our smaller humans, we have hand choppers. And with these, you just put them flat. It's got a nice holder that you put all the ingredients in, and then you're just pressing it. And so this is a great opportunity for kids that don't really have those fine motor skills yet. And then all of the sharper blades are all in the bottom. So we're not really worried about any of that type of thing. Additionally, we really love in the kitchen for any purpose to be using these types of peelers where there's plastic on both sides instead of the ones that are straight out, because it does give you a lot more control, and you're always pulling away from your dumb hand, so it really avoids getting a lot of those injuries. The other thing that kids really love to do is to use zesters. So if you have to zest some citrus, this is a great option for kids to do. The other thing is really thinking about appliances. So for almost every appliance we have, we can think about a different way to use them. I can see the complete hesitation for ovens, especially because they're very large, right? And so for most kids, they can't just lean over and put something in and out of the oven. So we want to be thinking about things that are just a little smaller. So something like a toaster oven where the pans are very small, that's something that kids can easily put in and out. And then things like using the blender. Once we put the blender on, then it's going to be a nice controlled thing. Somebody has to hold it in place so it doesn't move. So it's a great opportunity and very important task for people to do. And so we're really just thinking about what activities in the kitchen. When we're making our sweet potato latkes in kids class, we make them in a waffle iron because that's a lot safer of a controlled environment for my 8 to 12-year-olds to be doing on their own versus an open stove top. So that's something that's really dependent on the kid. However, we can really think about ways that we can use, maybe we want to use those traditional griddles that, I don't know, my dad always used them for making pancakes or going camping. Those are smaller, right? So that's a nice controlled environment that's electric if you have a gas stove. So maybe there's different ways that you can just have a more controlled environment. Additionally, if you're doing something like that in a bigger open space, whether it be a kitchen table or some type of bigger space, that's a really nice spot for kids to work on, whether it be that or an island or something, because then you have a lot more vision of what they're working on versus if they're just facing a wall on a countertop. That can be a little bit harder for you to manage working through. The other thing we love in the kitchen that we're always using is our step stools. So the best thing that we can do for any of our smaller chefs is to be giving them the right height so that they can see and have a lot of control. So whether that be standing on a step stool or just a small step or a chair, but something that really you're at the right level with the surface that they're cooking. A lot of the points in time, we're starting that by just sitting at a table, sitting at the kitchen table, something like that, because it does give us a lot of control of the space. And as a smaller human, I know it's hard to tell on the screen, but in the kitchen, a lot of the times I use a step stool so that I get the right height, so that way I have the right control of my environment. And then that's the same for any type of chef that's going to be in the kitchen. We want to be making sure that we're avoiding any type of hazard and giving ourselves the best options. And so that means decluttering the counter or removing things that aren't necessary. And that's why we really love if we're mise en placing, right? Like I was talking about with the recipe, I pulled all my ingredients out and all my equipment out on one tray. So I know exactly what I need in the kitchen. So it's really great for me, but it's also a lot safer. So I don't have a bunch of miscellaneous equipment around that could easily get in the way or allow someone to get hurt. All right, let me see.
Amber, I feel like that last tip you mentioned is such a good one. And I know it's one that Chef Katie, who is our other chef instructor around here, always mentions with her kids. When she's cooking with her kids, she'll take that extra time to just set it up so that once the kids come in, if they're like bouncing off the walls, she doesn't have that additional layer of stress because everything is already pulled and ready to go, nice and organized. Yeah.
Especially if you can get them involved in the mise en place. They're so good at measuring. So if we can measure out all of our spices and measure out all of our food ingredients at first, then we have this nice, beautiful tray of all those things. And then we just know exactly what we're working with as we're going through.
Definitely. All right. Are we ready to do a little check-in and move on?
I feel it. I do just want to do one more thing, just to know, as I mentioned, working with these recipes, really thinking about what things you like or you would do differently, really thinking about as I mentioned, the kitchen confidence, that's gonna be really important for adults and kids. And we really wanna be thinking about the best ways to empower everyone in the kitchen. So we wanna be thinking about while we're cooking, what things we liked and what things we didn't. But when we're eating, we wanna be thinking about what did you like? What would you change to make it better? And so that way we're able to ask our children what they would do to make it better. So they get their thinking caps on, but also so that way they're able to start are more desirable for them. Maybe vegetable. For today's sorbet, we could do any type of fruit for the most part. Maybe we don't want to do strawberries and we just want banana or whatever it may be. And so we really want to be thinking about that while we're cooking and while we're eating. So that way we're getting all the voices heard in the kitchen. All right. So I want to do a quick check-in to figure out how everyone's making out, who's cooking along, if everyone's making all the recipes or just a couple. And then we can get going in the kitchen.
So far, the only one I know for sure that's cooking along is Heather and Silas. And she just wrote that she's going to go for most of them. Oh, and Haley. Heather, Silas, and Haley. She's got a team there, which is good because she's going for all 4 recipes. So Heather, just keep us posted as we continue on with this class. If there's anything you need to clarify as we're working through this, you can feel free to write it in the chat. I'll address it there, or you can unmute yourself and just ask a question. And that goes for everybody too. So, all right, Amber, you think we are good to move on to our first recipe?
First recipe, zucchini muffins.
All right, so I'm going to be turning it over to Caroline. All right. Caroline, just so we can introduce everybody to y'all, Caroline is a dietetic intern. She's originally from New Orleans and just moved back here. She's been studying at the University of Georgia, completing her master's degree and her dietetic internship. She's working with us for the month of July, and we're excited to have her joining us for this class today. She is going to be leading us through this awesome zucchini muffin recipe. So Caroline, feel free to take it away.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. This is a really yummy recipe. It's a delicious savory snack or breakfast option. It has a variety of textures, colors. We've got nuts and veggies being incorporated into these muffins. So I will go ahead and get started. Let's see, I want to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing here. So first off, I am going to start by mixing our dry ingredients. So I have some all-purpose flour here. I have some whole wheat flour, as well as some sugar and our spices. So I will go ahead and start mixing those. So this recipe is interesting because we are mixing 2 different types of flours. We've got whole wheat and all-purpose. And typically, if you're looking to replace some of that flour with whole wheat flour, that's got that great fiber in it, more so than all-purpose flour, we typically recommend a 50-50 ratio. However, this recipe is unique in that we can actually use a full cup of the whole wheat flour, and we only use a half cup of the all-purpose flour. So that's great, and we can actually do that because of the extra moisture that we're getting from the zucchini. So that's great, and we get a lot of added fiber from our whole wheat flour. And it also provides that feeling of fullness when you're eating. You know, typical muffins or cupcakes that are mostly refined grains, they're not going to provide that fiber. And so, you know, they're not filling you up, and you will tend to eat more than a heartier, fibrous muffin that uses whole grains. So we're also incorporating a variety of warm spice flavors. So I have some ginger and cinnamon, And these are great because, like I said, it offers kind of that warm, spicy flavor without all of the sugar. So we're still getting a lot of flavor, but the sugar in this recipe is definitely not excessive. And something interesting to note is that, a lot of times you can remove a lot of the sugar, up to 25% in a recipe, without creating any, negative effects on the baking quality or the flavor. So that just kind of goes to show how, a lot of recipes call for more sugar than you really even need, especially when you have great flavor from, other spices like cinnamon. So I am done with our dry mixture here, and I'm going to move on to our wet ingredients. So I am using some oil, vanilla, and I've got 1 egg.
Caroline, what kind of oil is that you're using?
So this is a canola oil.
Okay. And I will just add, we like canola oil for baking. Oftentimes you might be used to buying something labeled vegetable oil. The problem with vegetable oil, it's not bad, but we don't know exactly what it is. And canola oil, we know, is really good and heart healthy. So that's why we tend to go for that one for baking.
Yes.
All right, so you're doing all your dry stuff, all your wet stuff.
I've added our vanilla, which kind of leads me to the point that this recipe is great because it's got such a mix of sweet and savory. We've got a little bit of sweetness from the vanilla, but we also have nuts and veggies and a little bit of salt flavor as well. But none of those components are overpowering. So everything in this recipe is super mild, but they work well together. So this is why, a lot of times I'll eat these for breakfast. It's a great way to kind of start the day because none of the flavors are super overpowering. So now that I have my dry and wet ingredients mixed, I'm going to go ahead and mix all of that together before I go ahead and show you the grated zucchini. And these muffins last a while in the fridge, but they can also be frozen, which is a great little tidbit, because if you are using these as a grab and go breakfast option, you can do a easy reheating, in a toaster oven or a microwave. And like I mentioned, they're super filling. So, just 1 or 2 of these as a breakfast can be a great filling option. And they serve as a great grab and go because they can be stored for so long.
Yeah, I think these muffins make a great make in advance, pop them in the freezer, kind of a little snack or like you said, breakfast. I also would enjoy something like this for breakfast because I'm one of those people that doesn't love a sweet breakfast, but I feel like a lot of times the quick breakfasts tend to go more sweet in taste. But I love that this one is a little bit sweet without being overly sweet. And you definitely have a nice balance where you get some saltiness. It's a really interesting flavor in these.
Yeah, and I definitely want to note, so this batter is obviously a little different than your typical muffin or cupcake batter. But like I mentioned, zucchini is pretty much mostly water. It's like up to 95% liquid. So once that's added, it actually releases a lot of that liquid into the batter. And that kind of serves as a big source of moisture in this recipe. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep mixing, and then I will add our zucchini, which really plays a huge role in the texture of the final product. So I have that mixed up, and now I'll show you kind of what's going on my cutting board here. So I have my zucchini, and I have a lemon, which is optional. The lemon juice is optional, but I personally love lemon, so I'm gonna go ahead and add some of that lemon juice. It calls for a tablespoon. I'm just gonna use juice from half.
So Heather, you mentioned that the muffins can be frozen. Can you freeze the batter and also freeze the finished product so you could freeze at any point?
You know, I've never tried freezing the batter. I'm not sure how well that would work out. I definitely know you can freeze the baked muffins because you're going to get 12, regular size muffins out of this. But anytime you're I will just say this, anytime you're adding fruits, fresh fruits and vegetables to things like baked goods, it does change the consistency where they're not going to hold up for days and days on end at room temperature, or even in the, you can put them in the fridge, but so your best bet, if you're not going to eat all 12 of these, in a couple days within your household, would definitely be to throw them in the freezer. And I don't know. I mean, you could try to freeze the batter. It might get weird though, I'll be honest. I would just bake the muffins and freeze whatever, maybe even just freeze half of them, whatever you're not going to plan on using.
Thank you.
Right away.
So I've gone ahead and cut the ends off my zucchini and cut it in half just to make it a little bit easier to handle. And going back to kind of, safety in the kitchen, since I'm using these larger holes, it's important just to kind of be mindful of how close your hand is getting to the grater and making sure to adjust accordingly. Because a lot of times, you think that knives are a source of possible injury, or, getting burnt from the oven or whatever, but other devices like these graters should definitely, just stay mindful of these as well.
Yeah, and I will say, I try to really veer on the edge of caution here because I actually have cut myself pretty badly on a grater before. So when I get down to a little nub and I feel kind of questionable, I just set it aside. You can always cut that into some pieces and eat it as a snack.
Right.
You're going to have plenty of zucchini. You should only need one about the size of that one that Caroline's working with to get what you need for this recipe. So better to err on the side of caution, I think. And you could also use one of those cute little gloves that Amber showed earlier. That's always a good option.
Right. So I got pretty close to the blade there. So I switched sides, and I'm going to see how much I have so far. I have about a cup right now. I'll probably do a little bit more because I have plenty to go. But I'll add that into our mixture.
Yeah, and Caroline, I think it's also a good point that you left the skin on. And, zucchini is a nice example of, summer squash or zucchini. Both of them have that nice tender skin. You typically do not peel it. And as you mentioned before, right, there's a lot of water content in zucchini, which really helps us in this recipe, providing some fun nutrition, but also helping the final product turn out with the right kind of texture. But really the best part about leaving that skin intact is that that's where a lot of that fiber content is coming from. And as you mentioned previously, we know that fiber is going to be that main element that's going to keep us feeling full. So really important with items like snacks, or even if you're using this as a little breakfast, that you want to make sure you're packing in as much fiber as possible.
Yes. So just like Heather mentioned, we're getting a lot of fiber, but this flavor from the zucchini really isn't overpowering at all. So it's great because we are getting a lot of benefits without really even noticing it that much. So this is something great that you can add to different recipes. And a lot of times it doesn't take over, the overall flavor of the recipe. And so lastly, I've chopped my nuts and I'm going to add those in there. Nuts are a great component of a healthy diet because they have omega-3s, which are an anti-inflammatory type of fatty acid. And they also have antioxidants. So basically just fighting inflammation in the body and, keeping your immune system strong. So this is definitely something that we encourage as a component of a healthy diet. But definitely note that these are pretty calorically dense. So, about 1/4 of a cup serving is going to be a healthy serving of nuts, because it can definitely add up. And nuts are something that are easy to kind of snack on mindlessly and overeat. So, but now that I've added zucchini and the chopped nuts, obviously you can chop the nuts a little bit smaller than I did, but I like a big crunch in my muffins. I love the nut component in there, but those can always be chopped, to your liking. So I'm mixing this up and I will scoop them shortly after.
I'm really glad that we can see what you got going on with that batter, because this batter is definitely not your typical muffin that's kind of, you're used to seeing something a little more liquidy or wet, I think, with a muffin or quick bread batter. So I think it's good that people are seeing this so that they'll know if yours looks like this, it's not wrong. It's actually right.
Yeah, it's definitely going to become more moist during the baking process from all of this great zucchini that we have in there. And I'm going to use a scooper to go ahead and make the muffins pretty consistent throughout. And this recipe should make 12 muffins. So I have lined my tray with some liners and I will start measuring those out right now.
And if you don't have a scooper like this, you can still use a large spoon. The scooper really just makes it nice and easy, as you can see Caroline doing there.
Yeah. So it definitely helps make it consistent, but a spoon also gives you a lot of control as well.
Yeah. I would say if you really like baking, or you have kids in your life that really like baking, having a scoop like this that you can use for making cookies, you can get a smaller one that's probably a little bit more appropriate for a cookie size batter. And then if you were using a smaller one, for something like this, you could just do 2 scoops per muffin tin or muffin cup there. It's just a really convenient thing to have if you're really into baking. If you're not so into baking, I don't know that I would invest in it, but I know I have a cookie size one of these at home that I use all the time.
Yeah, it just makes the scooping process super easy. And so first off, I'm going off and trying to kind of fill my liners around halfway, but I've got plenty left over. So I'm going to go back in and fill up some of these lower ones a little bit more, just so I can use all of my batter. And we've got, great color from the zucchini and the nuts, but there's a lot of different textures as well. So we've got a little bit of crunchy, savory, and then, like I said, the vanilla gives a little bit of sweetness as well. So it's a really unique flavor, the end result. And I really like that, they're not too sweet.
And guess what? It's summertime, which means zucchini is super plentiful right now. So this is a great way to use up, if you've got a lot of zucchini, maybe you're growing it in your garden, or maybe you have gotten some from the farmer's market. I know I used to work in an office where this guy would bring in zucchini every day that he was growing in his garden. He was always getting rid of zucchini. So it's always good to have different things that you can do with zucchini. A baking recipe like this is a great way to use it up for sure.
Absolutely. So I have all of my liners filled pretty full, and I've used up all the batter, and they look pretty consistent to me. So I'm gonna pop them in the oven. I've got it at 350, and these should take around 18 minutes. And kind of how we're gonna gauge when they are fully done, I'm just gonna stick a toothpick in the middle, and hopefully the toothpick will come out batter free. And that's kind of how we're gonna gauge their readiness at the end of our 18 minutes.
All right, awesome. So we will check back in with you, Caroline. And I am going to, for now, turn it back over to Chef Amber, who is going to get us started on the strawberry banana sorbet. I did drop that recipe in the chat just now. So Amber, let's go with the sorbet.
Yeah, if you look at this recipe, it's very similar to the recipe we did in May, which was a mango banana. Really, we can do this type of texture with any type of more starchy fruit. So mango and bananas are really the best ones to start as a base, but then we can build off of that by adding other fruits. So berries or seasonal citrus or whatever it is that's frozen, we can turn into a sorbet. And the really great thing about this is we get to have a nice cold, refreshing dessert without having to have, or just a snack in general, without having to have the added fat and the added calories and added sugar of an ice cream. So this is a really fun way that we can do that, and that will be complemented later with the chocolate magic shell. So we'll wait on that one. But for this recipe, it has 4 frozen bananas. My bananas kind of broke a little bit, but those go together. And then a cup of frozen strawberries. And so I have a Vitamix, which is a super powerful high-speed blender. So I know I can just put my frozen fruit directly in this. However, if you don't, what I recommend, or even if you do have this type of blender and you just want to go a little bit easier on it, take out your frozen fruit, let it warm up for about 5 minutes or so before you work with it. And what I also really love with this is you can put the banana whole, or you can cut it. So I'm going to break mine up into some pieces about this size. You can absolutely do this if you're going to be working with banana. You can always be cutting it into pieces before you freeze it, which is something that's really nice and easy. Frozen banana cuts super, super easily because of the starch content. And I'm just going to remove the little nib on the end so I don't mess up my color, but no other reason. And then I can just put this straight into the blender. If your sorbet is a little hard, you can go ahead and add a little water to the recipe. Another thing you can do with this is you can add really mix it up. You can add things like cinnamon or cocoa powder, PB2, which is that frozen peanut butter. Is that powdered peanut butter is a really great additive for this. As well as you can add different spices, herbs. I really love mint in this recipe, but it does change the color, so you have to be prepared for that. I'm going to add just a splash of water because I do know that this is quite wet. And then the other great thing you can add is always put some vanilla. So I'm going to mute mine for a second while I have this on my blender.
I will just chime in that I was going to type this in the chat, but now that we're waiting for Amber to blend, I'll share what I was going to share, which is that I usually freeze my bananas in half size. Like, I break it in half and then throw it in a bag. That way I know I can have an easy portion to add to something like smoothies. because banana does have a strong flavor, which is good a lot of times in a smoothie. When you are putting a lot of greens, for example, in there, you kind of want to taste something sweet and not taste kale, for example. But you also want to be mindful. So I always do the half-size pieces, or like Amber mentioned, breaking it into chunks can be a good idea. I will also just comment that it's a good idea to make sure you peel your banana before you freeze it. It's not going to work out so well if you still have the peel on. So peel off.
Yeah, we forgot to peel ours.
Oh, no.
We forgot to peel our banana.
Okay, so what's going on with it now?
It's just, I tried to peel it and it just, the top broke off, but none of the peel came off. After it, when it unfreezes, will you be able to peel them?
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. I would say hold off for now. Give it a minute or two. Like, you should be able to get it to peel once you let it defrost a little bit more.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, keep us posted though. But that's a great tip. And we probably should have put that in the recipe so people know. I always love keeping the peeled frozen bananas around. It's a great way to use up a banana that's getting too ripe on the counter, but you could use it for something later, like in a baked good recipe, or like what Amber's doing now with the sorbet, or maybe in a smoothie. Frozen bananas are great for defrosting and then adding to things like banana bread, or, we could do something like a zucchini muffin and have some banana in there. Banana is great because it can serve a lot of different functions in baked goods in particular. It can definitely act as a bit of a fat replacer and a sugar replacer, because you can use that for some of the sweetness. So that way you're only dealing with natural sugars. We could take some sugar out of those muffins, for example, and give it a little bit of a banana zucchini flavor profile, which would be fun. It looks like Amber added a little bit of water, which is common in this recipe. You can also, like she said, sort of just leave your frozen mixture to get a little softer. The other thing I wanted to mention is this can also be done in a food processor. So if you don't have if you have a blender that's just sort of okay, but you happen to have a food processor, that is a good option as well for making this recipe.
Okay, so that took me a second longer than expected. However, I'm gonna see if I can show you. It's super bright pink, like strawberry milk type of color. And so I'm just gonna pull this into a pan. I usually recommend either glass or metal because they're really great at taking in that cold temperature. Also, if you have those frozen, I know that you can make your own ice cream, and then there's those trays that you can keep it in. Those are great for this too. Okay, so I'm good. I'm gonna relocate it, and then let me see if I can just show you the texture.
Yeah, because it's cool because it actually is a really nice texture right away.
Yeah, so you can definitely eat this right away. I like to put it back in the freezer just that way it solidifies just a little bit more. But yeah, it's scooping just like ice cream. I could eat this right now.
Yeah, it's like a nice soft serve texture.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, I'm gonna pass it over to Janielle. Let me go ahead and get her video going here. All right, Janielle. And for those of you who may not have been with us last month, I just want to introduce Janielle to you. Janielle is also a New Orleans native who has been studying at Johnson & Wales University. She is finishing up her degree in culinary nutrition, and she's been with us this whole summer for her senior internship. And she will be headed off to get her master's degree and pursue a dietetic internship as well. So she is going to be another chef dietitian, which is really fun. All right, Janielle, you're working on our chicken tenders and broccoli bites. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that recipe in the chat and you can take it away.
Okay, hi guys, nice to meet you. I'm Janielle, as Heather said. One tip I'll give you guys is when I'm doing this recipe, I like to they have mini trash cans you can get from Dollar Tree for $1, or have a bag close to you so that when you crack your eggs or when you cut your broccoli, all the little excess pieces you can just throw away instead of having to walk around the kitchen and go to the trash can. So the first thing we're gonna do for this recipe, with my camera, is I'm gonna crack my eggs, and we're using 3 eggs for this recipe. And I'm gonna mix up my breadcrumb mixture with the seasonings we had. So for the eggs, you can either whisk them or use a fork like I'm using. And so one reason I love this recipe is because it's customizable. So today we're using Parmesan and salt and pepper and some herbs to add flavor. But if you want, you can add salt-free lemon pepper or Creole seasoning or any seasonings that you like to add. So that's one pro. Another thing I like about this recipe is that we use whole wheat breadcrumbs, which helps add more fiber that you would have into your food instead of what you would have if you use regular breadcrumbs. And one reason we like to have extra fiber in our diet, as Caroline said, is because it does help us stay fuller longer, and it just has extra nutrients that you might not get from using regular bread. So the one, I won't say a downside, but the one thing about using whole grain breadcrumbs is they're hard to find in the store unseasoned. So one tip our chef Katie likes to tell people is when she buys her whole grain bread, what she likes to do is take the ends and she freezes them until she gets 4 ends. So that'll be 2 loaves, or you can do 2 ends from 1 loaf. And once she freezes them, she either toasts them in the oven and let them dry out and then blend them for breadcrumbs. And sometimes she says if she's in a hurry, she just freezes them right out the freezer because the freezer does take out the excess moisture from it. So that's one way you can get these breadcrumbs, and it's cheaper than buying them in the store, and they're not seasoned with other additives that you might have from breadcrumbs in the store. So once you have your breadcrumb mixture mixed, I'm going to show you guys how I like to cut my broccoli and my chicken. So let me move back to my counter. And so for the broccoli, we're going to do florets. So florets are little parts of broccoli. So this is a head, and once I cut it, I'll show you a floret. When cutting broccoli, I like to put the head down so that my knife is going towards the cutting board and not towards my hand, which is another safety tip, especially if you're cooking with kids. I like to do it this way so that I have less chance of cutting my hands. Once I get it away from the stems, some pieces will already be the size I like. I like to keep them a little smaller because it does only bake for 10 minutes, and that helps keep the recipe even. So if you have any bigger pieces like this one, I would either cut it or break it apart. And so this would be fun for your kids because you don't have to cut broccoli to make it smaller. Some pieces they can break it apart and keep it on the side. So I love that about this. And this is a good way to add veggies and a fun way to the meal because it is like a fried thing. So another thing that we like about these is that you can do this with any vegetables. You can do it with zucchini, like Caroline was using earlier. You can do it with even cauliflower or whatever vegetable you like. So that's one pro to this recipe. And lastly, there's a lot of things we like, but I also like that this is a way to avoid deep frying your food. We don't use any oil, and as you'll see as you're cooking a recipe, no oil is needed to make this recipe get crunchy or get that fried effect that we love when we're getting chicken tenders. So that helps us remove some of the excess calories that we would get from using oil to shallow or deep fry our foods. So now that my broccoli's cut, I'm gonna go over my chicken with you guys. me just my chicken out. So when we're making our chicken, as you guys will see, I'll pat dry my chicken. I'm not going to rinse it like normal. So the reason at GCCM we pat dry our chicken instead of using the normal rinsing method is because when you rinse your chicken, the bacteria can splash all throughout the kitchen. So patting dry still helps remove the bacteria without having it go around the whole kitchen. And so our chicken will be cooked to 165 or fully done. So the bacteria won't grow on our chicken and make us sick. But if it happens to get on our sink handle or anything, then we have to worry about having the bacteria. So with my chicken, I'm gonna do thin slices so that I can do strips, but this recipe is really customizable so that you can even do chicken nuggets if you want by cutting thinner pieces. So I know in the recipe, we said that we want our chicken all the same size. And by same size, we mean the width of the chicken, not the length. So I'll show you an example. So we would want our chicken all the same thickness so that it can cook throughout evenly. So if I cut my chicken in half and bake it, it doesn't matter the length because that's not what affects it. It's the thickness that would stop your chicken from cooking evenly. So I want all my chickens the same width. We also love this recipe because it is able to be frozen. So with the chicken, we recommend you baking them and then putting them in the oven putting them in the freezer after it cools. And when your kids, your grandchildren, or even you want a quick snack, you can throw it into the oven so that you can have a quick snack. With the broccoli bites, we actually recommend that you leave it in the refrigerator than in the oven because when you freeze these broccoli bites and then put them into the refrigerator, you do not get the same yummy and crispy texture as you would if you were doing them fresh. So one good thing about this recipe is to always be prepared. So after we dip in our broccoli, we're gonna do our chicken. And I'm doing the broccoli first because I don't want to put my chicken through my mixture and then have chicken juices going throughout my broccoli. Another good hack is to have your pan ready. So as soon as you dip the broccoli or the chicken, your mixture is going directly onto the pan that you're using instead of going onto a plate or something. And that helps you have less dishes. So when dipping my broccoli and my chicken, I like to have a wet hand and a dry hand. And the reason I do this is so when I do my hand wet and dry, I can get the mixture to start to build up on my hands. And it starts to make this goopy stuff that first takes off the product, but also makes your hands feel a little funny. So after I dip it, I like to drip off the egg so that I don't have excess of moisture in my dry mixture, making a weird batter. So once you dip it and let it drip, you take your broccoli and you would just coat it like so. And then you just keep going. I'm doing mine on parchment paper, but you can also do this on foil, and this stops it from sticking. And it's also a good way to help eliminate the usage of oil instead of putting oil on your pan so it won't stick. So once you're done doing your broccoli bites, you can then start doing your chicken bites. So I like this recipe, and actually since I've been here, I've tried it with the other vegetables like zucchini, and I like it because the zucchini is kind of gives a chip effect, because if you do them in thin rounds, it can add this crunchy effect to the zucchini that you might not normally have when you're cooking it normal. I've
Jackie,
also
oh, sorry. I was just going to
Oh,
chime in for a second while you're doing all that breading, that this recipe is one that's a little tedious. It's a little time consuming. You got to do all this breading, but it's great because, as you said, the chicken does really well in the freezer. So you can take the time, maybe like on a weekend or a day where you don't have as much going on, and make this in a bigger batch so that you have it ready to go. Now, the broccoli doesn't freeze quite as well as the chicken does. And like Janielle was mentioning, we recommend just storing that in the fridge, but I will tell you, it reheats beautifully from the refrigerator. I've done it many times in my little toaster oven, but also in the regular oven. And you can kind of do it just sort of like gently. I would say maybe do it a little bit lower than the 400 that the recipe calls to bake it for initially. Maybe do like 350, because at that point it's already cooked. You're just looking to reheat it. And as opposed to using the microwave where it would get kind of mushy, if you throw it back in the oven or the toaster oven, you'll retain the crispiness, right?
Yeah.
And so Janielle, I don't know if you mentioned this explicitly, but I thought it was good to note that you're doing the broccoli first, so that way you're not having raw chicken in your egg and then putting your broccoli in that, because the chicken, we're going to make sure we cook that to a safe internal temperature, but the broccoli probably won't get as high of a temperature. So we wouldn't want to have raw chicken bits in our mixed in with the broccoli. So by doing the broccoli first, you can avoid that cross contamination. And then, like Janielle said, you could also do additional vegetables. Like she mentioned, the zucchini. We also could do eggplant, which is super prevalent right now in the summertime. And I think you also mentioned cauliflower. So there's a lot of different options here. So I know it's a little time consuming. Janielle can attest to this. That the broccoli takes a little while and you got to be patient, but it's also a great task for kids to do. And they might like having the gloppy fingers, but if you teach that lesson of like one hand wet, one hand dry, you can make sure you get more breading on the broccoli than on your fingers. I'm going to just ask one more thing. I want to just check in with our group that's cooking along. Heather, how's it going over there for y'all? We'll have, just feel free to let me know how it's going as we get through this part of the recipe. And Danielle, oh, sorry.
It's going good. It's just, yeah, we're still working on breading the chicken and the broccoli. Does she have any substitutes for egg? We have an egg allergy and as well as a peanut allergy. So I was just wondering, is there anything else you can use? I typically use butter. It's not as healthy, but do you have any other healthier suggestions?
I have a great suggestion for you. And we've done this with the broccoli, so I know it works. And that is that you can use the liquid from a can of chickpeas. So you know how when you have any kind of canned bean, but chickpeas works really well for this. You drain the chickpeas and that liquid that's left over, it's a product that's called aquafaba. I'll type it in the chat box so everybody can see how it's spelled. But you can use it in a lot of applications, and it really has a very similar consistency to that beaten egg, but it's completely vegan. So if you have a vegan person and you're wanting to do this recipe, you could sub that. You could take out the Parmesan cheese in the breading, but you'll get great results, Heather, if you try that.
It's also really great because then you're adding in the added protein with that liquid. It does have some. So then you're not just automatically substituting with a full fat or something that's just going to be a little bit more empty calories. With something like this, we're actually amplifying the recipe and making it more healthful.
One more thing I just want to mention, Caroline just messaged me that her timer for the zucchini muffins went off. So if you are baking those, make sure you keep an eye on that. We'll go back over to her shortly to see that finished product. And then Heather, if you want to show us your camera at any point and let us know how you're doing, feel free, no pressure. We know sometimes it can get a little crazy in the kitchen. But if you would like to show us how it's going, that would be wonderful. Danielle, how are you making out? Where are you still doing broccoli?
Right now I'm doing my chicken.
Okay, awesome. Let's see.
And if you guys are doing the zucchini muffins with Caroline and you're doing chicken bites, this would be a good time to put your oven up to 400 once you take out your zucchini muffins so that you can put the chicken bites and the broccoli bites straight into the oven. So these bites normally cook for 10 to 15 minutes depending on your thickness. So normally I just start mine off at 10 minutes, and then once I temp it, if it's a little bit under, I like to just do the extra 5 minutes just to be safe. So
all right, is there anything different we need to keep in mind as we're breading that chicken, Danielle, or is it the exact same procedure?
It's the exact same procedure.
Okay.
Egg, then the chicken, egg, then the whole grain. So as soon as you're done your broccoli, you can go straight to doing your chicken.
I always think when I do the chicken in particular, since it's kind of soft textured, I like to kind of pat it into the breadcrumbs, or I don't know if you can show what you're doing right now. It might be helpful to show, like I usually sort of sprinkle the breadcrumbs over with my hand and then sort of give it.
I'll show you guys. I'm kind of just finished my chicken, but like for an example, when I put my chicken in, if you guys can see, I like to pick up some breadcrumbs, put it over, and then pat my chicken into my breadcrumbs. And then when you take it out, it should be fully coated. Like this.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice and coated.
So now that I have my chicken and broccoli all coated, I'm going to actually put mine in the oven for my 10 minutes, and then I'll show you guys how to make the ranch dressing that we love and how to make the buffalo sauce. So let me get these in the oven.
I'm gonna go ahead and drop those recipes in the chat box while you're kind of getting things cleaned up there, Danielle, because I know you're gonna have to reset a little bit.
Yeah.
So I will just mention, we included 2 different dipping sauces for you, and you can just pick or choose or do them both. We love serving, particularly those broccoli bites. We love them with the buffalo. But we also know that for some people, buffalo sauce might be just a little too much. Not everybody loves the spice. So ranch is a crowd favorite, I think, of kids and adults alike. I don't know many people who would say they don't like ranch. So we've got different options, and you can also double them up. Dip it in some buffalo, then dip it in some ranch.
Yeah. So we're going to start off with our ranch. So for our ranch, we're using yogurt, and we're using a non-fat Greek yogurt, which is really thick and it adds this good richness. And the reason we're choosing this yogurt is because when you normally make ranch at home, you would use sour cream or even mayonnaise. And using this yogurt helps use less calories than the mayonnaise and the sour cream. And it also has protein in it, which is not something you would normally get in a normal ranch dressing. We're also going to use some buttermilk. And so since this is such a small amount of buttermilk, you do not have to buy buttermilk just for this one recipe. What you could do is take regular milk, and you can put some lemon juice or even apple cider vinegar to help replace the buttermilk. Or if you do buy buttermilk, there's lots of recipes you can use that use buttermilk so that you can get rid of it. So when we're doing this, we like to put fresh herbs and we put a little bit of salt and pepper. And as you see that we have an optional ingredient, which is the sugar. And so the reason the sugar is optional is because when you're going to get ranch, like specifically Hidden Valley from the store, they do have a lot of added preservatives, including extra sodium and sugar. And so when we're making this, our ranch is not as sweet as it would be if you went to a store to get this dressing. So the sugar is optional if you like that sweet taste and you want to have some of that sweetness with your food. So another reason we love this ranch is because not only is it good for the chicken and broccoli bites, but it's a good alternative. So when you like to eat ranch with your raw vegetables, or if you like to eat ranch with your pizzas, this ranch is a good substitute. So for this, we'll have fresh dill, and we're gonna have fresh parsley, and I'll teach you how to mince both of those up. So starting with the dill, I'm gonna cut off the stems. And if you see, I'm holding my knife at the fat part or the end with 2 fingers to make sure I have a good control over it and that it won't slip while I'm cutting. And I'm also making sure that I have my finger clawed or into like a fist almost, so that when I am moving my knife, I won't have it possibly chopping my finger, which is another safety feature. Well, not a feature, but tip. And also, you never feed your knives, because if you start feeding your knives, then you might eventually feed your finger to your knives. So I like to just move my knives towards the food, moving my fingers back to ensure that my fingers aren't being touched by the knife. And so I'm going to do the same thing with the parsley that I did with the dill, and I'm just going to cut off the stems again, and I'm going to bunch it up and chop through them. So another tip to be prepared for when you take out your food, I like to have my oven mitts and the area where I'm going to sit my hot like stuff out the oven prepared, so that when it's time for my timer to go off and I'm taking stuff out the oven, I'm not running around like, oh my gosh, where's my oven mitts? Oh, I need to find my like a place to sit my pan. And it helps relieve the extra stress to know where your pan's going and to have your oven mitts on hand so that when you need them, then you can just pull them. So I added my fresh dill and my parsley to my dressing, and this just helps it have a fresh flavor that you might not get from store-bought ranch. And this ranch actually does last a long time. It lasts up to 7 days in a airtight container, which we love. And I'm just gonna move some things out the way so that I can show you guys how to make our buffalo sauce. So for our buffalo sauce, let me move down. So we're using some unsalted butter, and we use a normal buffalo sauce recipe that you may find online. But the difference is our buffalo sauce recipe uses less butter than recipes that you would find online, which helps cut out the extra fat that you might have, which is a good tip. And we also add some lemon juice, which helps give us a nice pop or bump in flavor. So when we're doing this, we only want to warm it for 15 seconds and do 10-second increments the more we go. So we're going to start by melting our butter. Then we're going to put our hot sauce and our lemon juice into it. So one thing I would recommend for you guys is to, while your butter is melting, start getting your hot sauce close by and your lemon close by. So let me move my camera back down. So I have my butter there. I'm going to put some of my hot sauce in. We also do add a little bit of black pepper. It just helps it taste more rounded in flavor. And then with my lemon juice, we only need a little bit of lemon juice. Sorry, my background's dirty. I'm just going to cut my lemon in half. And I'm going to use a citrus squeezer, or you can use your hand since it's only about a teaspoon. And you just squeeze your lemon juice in there. And so with this recipe, if you're not eating it right away, it will harden because of the butter. So whenever you want to use it, you can just warm it up in 10-second increments in the microwave to get it back to its loose texture. This is also good for up to 7 days in the airtight container. And it goes really good with the ranch and the buffalo bites. Well, I call them buffalo bites because I like to put the sauce on my chicken bites, but it goes good with your broccoli and chicken bites. And there you have it. You have your buffalo sauce, you have your ranch sauce, and your chicken bites should be ready to come out in any second.
All right, awesome, Danielle. I'm going to turn it back over to Chef Amber now, who's going to finish up her dish with the chocolate magic shell that she's going to put on her delicious sorbet. But I did want to just mention something really quickly. For that hot sauce action, we do recommend using either like a crystal hot sauce or the Frank's hot sauce. Those are the ones that are going to give you the best flavor that you're looking for in a traditional kind of like, you know, if you're thinking of what buffalo wings taste like, that's kind of what you want to go for. We use crystal here at the Teaching Kitchen at Gold Ring Center. It works really well in that recipe, but one of those two is your best option. All right, Chef Amber, let's finish us out here with our wonderful chocolate magic shell.
Okay, so I just put my coconut oil in the microwave. You want to make sure that you're building this all in a heat-safe bowl. So what I really like is just to start with a big bowl, so that way I can heat up oil and then add everything to it so we have less dishes.
Hey, Amber, I just want to let you know.
Melted completely. And the thing that's really, I think I definitely froze on that.
Okay, go back for just a second. You did freeze up.
Okay.
Okay,
so I microwave the coconut oil. In a heat-safe bowl. I really love glass bowls because, especially when I'm cooking with kids, because I think that it gives you a lot more options to see what you're working with, and then it makes it a little bit more fun. So this is my coconut oil. It's a half a cup. Now this recipe you can absolutely make in bigger batches. I really like this because you can make it and then store it, which I'll show you in a second. So we want to be mindful of our equipment, and we have to work a little quick. So I'm going to have something I can mix with and be ready for it. So now that my coconut oil is nice and hot, I'm going to mix it very quickly with my cocoa powder. So this is a 1-to-1 ratio of cocoa powder to coconut oil. I really love the cocoa powder because it doesn't have the added milk solids, the fat, the sugar that are in chocolate chips, which are traditionally used for a chocolate dish, but also because we are able to have a very chocolatey flavor. This is a bit more of a dark chocolate flavor, but it will be set off with the maple syrup. So it gives us a lot of control with our dish. Once all of the chocolate, the powder dissolves, which it does take next to no time when the oil's hot enough. your oil's not hot enough or you take a pause before you're ready to do it, just pop that in the microwave quickly, and it will mix in. Okay, now I just need to add my maple syrup to my dish. And so I'm gonna do this 1 tablespoon at a time.
I like that measuring spoon you have, Amber. That's so cute.
Oh, thank you. It's super great plug. I know that Miss Lynetta sent these out to everyone that cooked along last time. They're super handy because I really love that I can just keep them all together and fold it up and then not have to worry about having a bunch of space taken up in my drawer.
Yeah, definitely a space saver. I just wanted to mention too that we have, like, you can make a recipe for this with using the chocolate chips instead of the cocoa powder and the maple syrup. You'll get, if you have, people in your life that really don't like dark chocolate flavor, that can be a better option for you. You just need to be mindful that it is going to be a little bit more calories. You can use, less coconut oil in that preparation, but it's going to be, you're going to get more sugar. And one thing I really like about this version that Amber did today here with the cocoa powder is that the really rich dark chocolate flavor goes so nicely with the sweetness that she's going to have in that sorbet, all that natural sweetness from the banana and the strawberry. And so it's a really nice counterpoint. And I know, Amber, maybe you can speak to this a little bit because you're not the biggest dark chocolate fan, but you really like this, right?
Yeah, I have a sweet tooth, and I really do not enjoy dark chocolate as for a hobby or treat. Like, I don't want it in my life. However, I definitely have, everybody teasing me, I have the palate of a child when it comes to sweetness. So that's why when we were developing this recipe, we're really trying to focus on how we could get that sweetness without having to have a bunch of added processed foods or chocolate chips. You absolutely can do that, but this plays really nicely with the sweetness of the sorbet. And so they play off of each other. You can also add things like vanilla to this, and it'll add an added flavor. As Caroline was mentioning, when we're adding those different spices that we perceive and we correlate with sweetness, then we're able to have a really flavorful and thoughtful sweetness in our head, even though we didn't have to add the sugar. For this one, I put some in a jar because I wanted to talk about how you can put it in the fridge, and then I put them in these small jars because I want to heat up in small amounts. So I'll keep this in the fridge and then pop this in the microwave when I want some magic shell, and then I can have it on hand at any point in time. So you have a very sweet treat. It's a really great gift if you do something like that. Okay. And I'm going to just scoop up our sorbet while everybody's working on their plating so you can see what we have. The greatest tip that Chef Katie taught me, as she is our resident mom, is to just start with a smaller container. Start with something fun. I have a bunch of random containers like this from from thrifting and going to the secondhand store, because I really think that those are fun and they're entertaining for part of the eating experience. So if I use something like these, I can make a small amount, and we're tricking our eyes, whether it be adults or kids, into seeing more because our plate's fuller. So at the kitchen, we always recommend eating with a salad plate because it looks like you're eating a lot more food. Then I can just go ahead and scoop my sorbet. I might go with the edges because it's a little bit harder. Ideally, I'd give it a little bit more time in the freezer, so don't judge that. But the real trick is when I put the magic shell over the top, I think you can see it well, it will harden. Put a little bit there, and then give it a second. And you can actively see it hardening and losing its shine. And it holds nice and hard into just like what I grew up with our chocolate with the magic shell. And then that way, when we're cutting into it, we're scooping out a really beautiful bite, and it gets that hard shell, which is nice. Danielle and Caroline, you want to show us what you guys have for your plating?
So I did use a salad plate like you said, and I put some of my buffalo sauce onto my chicken. I have like a buffalo chicken bites, but then I have my ranch over here so I can dip my broccoli into it.
Yes, I have plated a few of the muffins. They smell delicious.
Yum. Do you want to show, would you mind showing us, like, break one open so we can see what it looks like inside?
Yeah. This was about 19 minutes. So I left them in, I checked them at 18 and then I left them in for a little bit just so they would get a little crispier, but
Nice.
perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Amber, can you show us, can you crack that crispy shell with a spoon, please? Because I feel like that's what I need to see in my life right now.
Completely understandable.
Yeah, Danielle, I really like that you put the buffalo sauce on your chicken. I think it's going to be really nice when you dip that into the ranch.
Can you hear it cracking?
Ooh,
Like
a little bit, yeah.
But
Awesome.
it's like a full hardened piece of chocolate on top of there, if you can see that.
Yum. I think what's great about these recipes is that we have things that are very satisfying. So it's really important when you're thinking about snacking, how can you make it something that's going to be satisfying? Meaning, what's going to keep you feeling full? What's going to satisfy both your taste buds, but also, you know, your stomach? And we always are really big on fiber. We've got a lot of fiber going on here between the incorporation of fresh vegetables to using whole grains. We're using nuts, even there's some fiber even in Amber's dessert, which you're not going to see in a typical ice cream, right? So thinking about where you can incorporate more of these items in your meals versus focusing so much on what not to eat. It's a really big part of what we are teaching at the Goldring Center for Culinary Medicine is how can we add things to your diet to make it a little bit healthier versus telling everybody, don't eat this, don't eat that, right? So hopefully these recipes today will inspire you as you're thinking about coming up with some nice homemade snacks. I know it can be hard. Oftentimes, you know, we have to plan, right? Like this is the hardest thing about eating healthy, in my opinion, is that it's not just going to be this magical thing that you can do. You've got to put some effort into it and some time. Hopefully some of the resources that we have available for you will make that a little bit easier for you to do. Our website, besides the recipes that we've shared with you today and the ones that are available through the link for the AARP classes, we've got a ton of great recipes on there for you. So, you know, think about that as you are doing some of your planning. Lastly, I did just want to check in with Heather. If you want to let us know how you made out with the recipes, that would be great. I also hope that if you didn't make the recipes today, you'll think about making them in the future, but for yourself, for your family. These are all dishes that I think everybody really enjoys. We do these with a variety of audience in our classes, you know, our adults, our families, our kids class. And we often find that people really enjoy them. Oh, Heather is showing us some action here. Let me actually add you to our little spotlight camera. Oh my gosh, it looks so wonderful. Oh my gosh,
So many things.
And the chicken is still in the oven, but chicken.
That's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And I will just say that some people may feel like, you know, this seemed like a lot to be doing in one time, but look, she did it and she's got her kids there.
Yeah, they kind of bailed, but they enjoyed the muffins and I'm sure they'll enjoy the dessert, the shell and the sorbet. So this is pretty much our lunch. So it worked out well because it's almost lunchtime. We're in Rhode Island, so it's almost lunchtime here. So
yes, well, it is also almost lunchtime here in Louisiana. But I will mention too, that's another good point. These things that we made today are very filling, particularly, you know, those chicken tenders and the broccoli bites. You know, you can definitely make a meal out of this section of snacks. So great. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Heather. I really hope your kids like the recipes. We are going to go ahead and say goodbye, although I will remind you, since Lynetta had to hop off early, I'm going to go ahead and remind you about our next class. Let me just grab the date real quick. It is going to be Wednesday, August 18th, this same time, 10:30 to 12 in here locally in Louisiana. And that month, we are going to be focusing on Hispanic heritage. So we'll be trying to do some dishes that will speak to that. And I hope that y'all can join us. These have been really fun. And don't forget that, as Lynetta mentioned, she has great giveaways if you want to cook along with us. And it's super fun. We love it when you cook along. So keep that in mind for next time. We definitely make sure you have the recipes plenty ahead of time so that you can do the shopping. We provide a shopping list as well as equipment list so you can get nice and organized before we start, just like our chefs are, so that you can be right on the same target with them. And then, as she mentioned, coming soon, hopefully around October, we'll be offering the option, if you live here locally in New Orleans, you can stop by the kitchen and come pick up a little grocery bag of all your ingredients for the recipes that we'll be cooking, ready to go, so that you can make your life even easier. So please sign up for the next class. Email Lynetta. She put her email in the chat box earlier. If you have any questions or problems, we'll get this video uploaded for y'all as soon as possible. And thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thanks to Chef Amber, Janielle, Caroline. Thank you. Great job, ladies. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.